Hey, everybody, Jim Cummings here. And if Tigger were here, he'd say, thanks, everybody, for bouncing on in here and enjoying the show. But before we go, I want you to do me a small favor. Hit like, subscribe, and give us a thumbs up if you're enjoying the show. Now, speaking of enjoying the show, enjoy the show.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Tuned In with Jim Cummings. Today, we have a very special guest for you.
Yes, we do.
You may not know her face, but everybody, almost everybody that we've talked to on this show knows her face and holds her in the highest regards. Over 10,000 studio sessions, correct? Over 10,000 studio sessions, 8 Emmys, just an amazing career and an amazing person, so from what I've heard. Andrea Romano joins us today.
Hey, hooray, hooray.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me to play.
Oh, amen.
Something you always said to me every session you ever came in. Whether you had 2 lines or 200 lines, you always thanked me for inviting you to come play. And I always thought that was so elegant and lovely. So,
I appreciate that.
I appreciate you.
Well, oh my God. And I'm so glad she has a really good memory. Because boy, oh boy. And we were talking earlier, and I have to say that my career and our friendship are the same age.
Just about. Just about.
Truly. I broke into the business by accident, on purpose. I mean, I was aiming for it.
Right.
But the way I did it was by accident. You know, a customer in my video store said he heard about a guy who knew a guy who was casting for a thing, and isn't that what you were trying to do? And I go, yeah. So I got that job, and then I said, well, I don't know a single soul. You should take a workshop.
Right.
And I said, yeah, a workshop? You mean they teach this sort of thing? Boy, do they ever. Have I? Good luck to you. And here you were, and Sue Blue.
Right.
And so I got in touch with you.
And what year would this have been? Can you remember?
84-ish.
Wow.
And change.
Wow.
84 and change.
So I was just starting in Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah, or 85 maybe 85. Okay. But yeah, and it was over
40 years.
at the Voice Caster. Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
40 years.
Yeah.
And I'm only 45, so it's pretty amazing.
I know. You're just a little nipper. Yes, indeed.
I forgot it was the class.
And I was your older
that's
friend.
How I met you.
Yes.
I forgot it was in the class.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a beautiful
If I remember correctly, we had what somebody referred to as a bunch of ringers in that class because so many people then went on and had careers.
Oh,
wasn't Ann Ryerson in there?
Yeah,
and Cam
Ryerson.
Clark?
Cam Clark.
And I think there was 1 or 2 other people that also then went on to have like good voiceover careers.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Mae Whitman's.
Pat Music.
Pat Music.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why she's not Whitman, I don't know, or the other one, but yeah.
She's Pat Music because that was her name professionally before she got married to Jeff Whitman, and then she kept her name Pat Music. But it's a good name.
It's very musical.
It is indeed.
Yeah, I would have kept it. I would have kept it, and I
So
kept
sorry.
Cummings. Oh, there we go.
Forgive me.
She's very popular.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to
She's
do it this way.
really popular. Your phone. She's bigger name on the line.
Sorry, I'm really sorry. Technically challenged.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, you too, huh?
Oh my Lord.
Everything's a challenge.
I forget. I was supposed to do something. Sign up for something somewhere. I think it was with Spectrum.
Was that you too? Oh, okay.
And
so that's good because I'm on the. Anyway, go ahead.
That's good. And they, well, if you have this, then do this with the Roku, and then you can do this and enjoy it. And I'm like, you just said 12 words that none of which make sense to me. Can somebody just come to my house and fix this? And they say, no. They just don't. They don't send people out. They don't anymore. Very rarely will they say, I can help you from here.
Probably not.
Probably not. And they didn't.
Yeah.
And the landline I was speaking to them on that they supply disintegrated to the point where we could no longer hear each other. Myself and the person that was trying to help me.
During that phone call?
During that phone call.
Jeez. Wow.
So anyhow, sorry.
Well, no, I think you have a legitimate gripe there.
I do. And I had something else I have to deal with. And that might have been who was calling. Could have been.
But did I hear right 10,000?
10,000. Yes.
I have to think about that. That's a lot of sessions.
Think about, even back when we first started with Ducktales, that was one of the very first series that started with a buy of 65
Yeah,
episodes.
that was 65 right off the bat.
So gone were the days of 13 and 26
That's true.
episodes. It was 65.
Yeah.
And then, if you only got picked up for 26, it was pretty much guaranteed you were going to at least go to 52. And of course, this
Yeah.
was all because of the syndicated package. It
That's
made
right.
it made
yeah,
it
and they're
make
four.
sense. Right.
Yeah, that
right.
adds up.
So aside from the class, was it Ducktales? Our first?
Yes. And I remember it because Disney named the theater El Capitan. I played El Capitan.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and you needed an old 400-year-old Spanish pirate. So who else would obviously call Cummings?
Wow. Wow.
And
I love that you remembered that.
I remember. I must tell you, my young friend, you have to find an old wooden ship. What did he say?
That's why you got the job.
But
That's a really good voice.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, and it hurts, and it reminds me of my Uncle Sam.
I think we used a similar offshoot of that voice on Puss in Boots or something that you came to play on. Something that was
Ginger. It was.
Yeah.
It was. I was.
I know.
El Kabong? No,
Something
that was Quick Draw McGraw. Yeah, El Kabong.
There's so many of those cartoons that are airing again and make me so happy. The classic Hanna-Barbera cartoons, the Huckleberry Hounds, which were my personal favorites.
Oh, yeah.
And to get to meet people like Dawes Butler and work with
yeah.
Mel Blanc and June Foray.
Yeah,
and
I never did meet Dawes Butler. Who is the very first legendary guy that you met? You were at Hanna-Barbera. You were Hanna-Barbera.
It would have been Dawes.
Yeah.
And I met him not at Hanna-Barbera. I met him.
Who can you just clarify for the
Yeah.
audience?
Dawes Butler is the voice of
get
Yogi
ready.
Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw. So any voice that wasn't Don Messick or Mel Blanc was.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
I do believe that Don Messick and Dawes Butler were equally as talented, certainly, as Mel.
yeah.
But Mel had better publicity
Ugh,
because he
Yogi.
was an on-camera actor on the
Yes.
Jack Benny Show. And so he actually
That's
had a
true.
publicity machine in position. And so he got all the press. And when Warner Brothers decided to use cartoon character voices and said, let's save some money and just use one guy, that gave Mel a huge foot up in the industry altogether.
Yeah,
but
that's for
Dawes
sure.
Butler, when I first met Dawes, I was at Hanna-Barbera, maybe my first week there. So we're talking
wow.
1984. And when he came in, he was a diminutive man, a giant talent. He wasn't much taller than I am, and I'm just 5 foot. And I shook his hand, and I know I must have been shaking like the fans we meet at Comic-Con.
yeah.
And I just said, Mr. Butler, I'm so happy to meet you. Huckleberry Hound was my personal favorite character in the whole world.
Yeah,
and
me
he
too.
spoke to me as Huckleberry Hound. And at this point, I'm, a 27, 28-year-old
Yeah.
woman, and I burst into tears. Just lost
gosh.
it. Just wept and
Oh, my gosh.
because I was transported in time.
Yep.
As watching those cartoons do to you now. You remember the pajamas, the feety pajamas you were wearing, the cereal
yes.
that you used to eat to watch, because
Yeah.
Saturday morning and weekday afternoons were the only times we could watch cartoons. There wasn't a Cartoon Network. There wasn't a Boomerang. There were none of these.
20 hour, 4
No,
hours
you
a day.
couldn't find cartoons other than those times.
Yeah.
And so, but to meet Dawes was an absolute thrill. Mel was fabulous. We did, I'm not sure if you were a part of this. I don't think you were. Maybe one of the things I did that you weren't a part of, when we remade the Jetsons.
Oh.
And of course, all those guys were on that show.
I
think you
wasn't
guessed
on
it.
many. Yeah, I guessed it.
Yeah.
And then I sang the song as George Jetson.
Great.
We are the world, or whatever. I can't remember the name of it, but it was honestly, it was
That's
actually kind of similar to that.
Right.
But I was singing George Jetson.
That's great. We remade it.
I forgot about
it. Was like 40. Gosh, they made 26 original episodes, and then 20 years later, they decided to make 41 additional ones to make a syndicated package.
Is that what that happened? How
And
that happened?
then, so Gordon Hunt, the director at Hanna-Barbera at the time, the voice director, and I was the casting director at the time, we sat down and I said, Gordon, I think they're all still alive. Should we reach out to all the original actors first and go from there? And he's like, let's try. So we
Well,
went
he certainly
to-
knew about BJ. BJ Ward.
Right, but this is even before. This was way back when.
Oh,
This is
before
the
they-
original Jetsons voices. This is Dawes Butler and Mel Blanc as Mr. Spacely.
Oh, sure.
This is George O'Hanlon,
Jetson.
right?
Yeah.
George O'Hanlon, Penny Singleton, because the Jetsons was Blondie.
and she
It
was Judy?
Janet
Judy?
Waldo.
Oh, it's Janet Waldo.
Waldo was Judy, who still sounded exactly the same.
Yeah.
But what was so cool about doing the Jetsons again after 26 years or whatever and getting them all back was Dawes was a teacher. And Dawes
Yeah.
taught fabulous classes and taught many voice actors that we have
Nancy
worked with over the
Cartwright
years.
and so many.
Roger Rose and many, many successful voice actors. And Penny Singleton had dentures at this point, and her dentures would click when she would record. So
Holy
she was
Chuck
taking
McCann.
classes with Dawes to learn how to not click,
Oh.
while she spoke. And George O'Hanlon had had a couple of strokes, was blind. And so he reached out to his wife and said, do you want to even present him with this? We'd like to see if we can make it work. And she said, let me talk to him. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Called us back and said, I haven't seen him so excited in a decade.
Oh.
And if you are willing to do the extra work that it will take, let's try it. So we would send them the scripts in advance. She would read every word of the script, every stage direction, every camera pan, every bit of dialogue to George and record it on a cassette. You might have heard of cassettes.
Yes.
And then when they would come to the session, they would drove in from like way the heck out, Thousand Oaks or something, West Hill or something. And she would play the cassette for him because he was blind. So he would remember the story. And then Gordon would sit in the studio with George and feed him the lines. And I would sit in the control room and listen for any issues. And then after we recorded all of his stuff, we would edit it together because sometimes, the Foodoraka cycle and those words would trip him up. We edit it together and then speed everybody just a little bit to bring the pitch of their voices back up because gravity affects our vocal cords the same way it does all the rest of the parts that begin to lose their strength.
I have a part like that.
And that raises the. And back in those days, we didn't have the ability to just click a button and make the pitch go up.
Sure.
We had to actually speed the reel-to-reel tape.
So I have a question about that.
Okay.
So does that mean they have to record slower, speaking the dialogue?
No, because they were slow. That was the problem. Everybody was considerably older, like in their 80s, most of them. And so this actually fixed two problems. It fixed the pitch and it fixed the pace.
There you go.
That said, another show that we worked on a bit, I believe, together was Chippendale's Rescue Rangers.
Oh, my goodness.
And that show, the three main characters, Chip, Dale, and Zipper, all
Monterey
were
Jack.
sped.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
were all
that's true.
sped,
That's true.
sped. So
Zipper, really.
they did have to act like this and make it make sense. So we would record the whole cast who didn't have to be sped, record the actors who had to be sped up by slowing the tape down, I think like 50%.
Yeah, a lot.
And then we'd have to play it all back to make sure it was clear and that it made sense. And it didn't sound like the actors were acting that way.
Yes.
And then do their pickups. It was a very complicated, joyful
I remember it
experience.
so well. Oh my
It
gosh.
was really fun.
Yeah.
Which show did you do Fat Cat?
That was Rescue Rangers.
Rescue Rangers.
Rescue.
There you go.
Yes.
I only just
Fat
threw away
Cat.
the oven mitt that you gave me of Fat Cat recently because it was so dirty and stained.
Oh, that's good.
It was no good anymore. But it was a gift from you, and I
Yes.
saved it forever.
Oh,
Very
good,
hard
good,
to throw
good.
that away.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, God only knows where those are now. They had that one little sort of not a mini reboot, but what would you call it? That back at the
Of DuckTales? Of Rescue Rangers?
yeah. Well, they had a cameo
Oh.
in a
In
a
it wasn't that. It was like less than 10 years ago, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
like-
it wasn't well received.
I don't remember hearing about it.
No. Well, it was like two or three lines. Fat Cat had a line. I think Chip and Dale each had a line.
They made an appearance in another
yeah,
cartoon.
It was in a, yeah.
I see.
It was
Yeah.
some kind
A
of
feature?
retrospect.
A feature?
No, it was a series. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember for the life of me.
Terrible.
what it's
It must
called
not
right
have, wasn't a big hit.
Yeah, apparently not. It's
Not a
all
big
good.
hit.
All good.
But it was.
now. Let us know in the comments. I'm sure you guys know.
Yeah, that's true. You guys know everything. They really do too.
They do.
Yeah,
And they also have
as
access
you
to
know.
information way faster than we did. I used to
I
have,
know.
I used to have, I mean, IMDb and
Yeah,
all
and
those
your
things help us
Collier's
so much.
Encyclopedia.
Truly.
You know.
I had a mimeographed
Okay.
list of the Hanna-Barbera classic characters and who voiced them. So, for example, when we did the Jetsons, I had to go back and find out who did Henry the plumber, the handyman in the Jetsons
Yes.
thing, and find out. And here's an interesting thing I learned. All that information, by the way, was actually on 3x5 cards written in pencil that I found the casting notes for the Jetsons. And
On somebody's Rolodex or something
it was
like
in a
that. It
box
wasn't
of
even-
things in storage. I mean, forever it took to find it. Written in pencil.
Wow. It's in the
And
Smithsonian now.
It should be.
It should
and
be.
here's the trivia that so few people know is George Jetson, the first episode, was originally voiced by Maury Amsterdam.
Maury
And they replaced him with George Hanlon before it aired. But the little card with the pencil and the line through it didn't erase. Fortunately, they wrote the line through and then put George O'Hanlon. So he
my
did it
gosh.
first. And that would have been good casting, I think.
Yeah, I can see that.
But
Yeah, and for folks who don't know who that is, he was on the old Dick Van Dyke Show. And if you don't know who that is, what the hell are you watching
Yes.
this thing for?
really,
No, anyway.
he just turned 99, Dick Van Dyke.
Yes. Yeah.
Still can sing, still can dance a little bit around. Remarkable.
Yeah, and sharp as a tack.
Really.
Yeah.
What's his name? Chris, the musician who just did a thing with him. Oh, he's huge. This is just terrible.
Oh, Chris
Oh my.
Christopher Cross. No.
No.
Let us know in the comments.
I'm
let
so
us know.
embarrassed. They just did a huge concert over in Europe and Ireland, and he did a special with Dick Van Dyke and wrote a song for him on the spot.
Wow.
Wrote a song for him on the piano. He's huge. I'm just so embarrassed.
Oh, well.
His name, it'll come to
Send
me.
their cards and letters in.
Yes.
Do you have any musical background?
I do, as a matter of fact. I originally was going to use music as my
Was your thing.
thing. I played bass clarinet and I sang. And literally, as I was leaving for college with music as my major to the State University of New York at Fredonia, upstate New York,
As in Hale.
as in Hail Hail. I'll tell you a story about that in a second. I just decided that music didn't do it for me. It didn't thrill me the way I wanted to be thrilled by my choice of career. And as I looked at this, it was one of those buck slips. It was one of those hard pieces of cardboard that's about that size and had all the majors that the college offered. And I looked at music and I went down farther and I saw theater arts. And I went, ooh. And I checked that and changed my major like a week before I showed up at college.
Wow.
Because the whole first year is always liberal arts. You have to take all the same courses no matter what you're going to specialize in. And I'm so glad I did because it really changed my trajectory.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But the music always helped me
Yes.
because
Well, you've only overseen about 1,000.
That's why I asked, because so
sessions.
many voice actors have musical theater backgrounds, we're in a band, and
Right.
I think it really helps with like the timing and the intonation and everything. And the reason I ask you is because you have to have, for your profession, your career, you have to have a good ear.
Right.
You have to be able to
yeah,
distinguish
she does.
things.
Right.
So, kick my butt, that's for sure. Yeah. Oh, that's so true. It's so true.
It was joyous to direct musicals. It really was absolutely thrilling. Because I can read music, and also because I was able to let actors, which has always kind of been my theory of, let me make an ass of myself. So the actor, if they feel like they're making an ass of themselves, they feel like, well, it's okay, Andrea did it. If she does it, I can do it too. And so I would sing something for them, not worrying about my performance, just trying to show it needs to be na 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 na. And that's all I would have to do. And then the actor would go, oh, okay. And then they could take it to their level of performance, which was far superior to mine. But at least I knew where that note had to get to eventually.
Yeah, that's important.
It really is. State University of New York at Fredonia, its claim to fame, when the Marx Brothers toured there as a vaudeville group, they threw them out. So Duck Soup, Hail, Hail, Fredonia, da, 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 my alma mater.
Wow.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Isn't it cool? So every year, of course, they would have a huge screening of Duck Soup, and everybody
do
would
they?
get high as a kite. And
Why not?
student
that's
commons
great.
and watch Duck Soup.
Oh, that's a
It's
scream.
fabulous.
Oh, that's very cool. I didn't know that.
Yep.
I mean, I knew about the Fredonia part. I still remember. I got my Andrea lore. I know my stuff.
Thanks, man.
And that's why you're here too.
So
right?
you guys worked together on DuckTales.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
What else?
Rescue Rangers.
Rescue Rangers.
There was a series at Disney. We did a lot of Disney stuff together.
Yeah.
I also brought you into the Warner Brothers world because I wanted you to be
Yeah.
on everything I was working on, frankly.
Yeah.
But we did a show, and I'm so glad we're getting the opportunity to speak about it. We did a show called Bonkers,
Yes, we did.
and it was.
It was.
It was one of those situations. Now, I was not the casting director on these projects because Disney had their own casting department. And they went through dozens and dozens and dozens. I'd say hundreds.
And it was inspired by Roger Rabbit.
Correct.
The success of Roger Rabbit.
Correct. As many things were. The animation industry was, reinvigorated by the success of Roger Rabbit. People went,
and the concept of
animation.
calling cartoon characters Toon's.
Right.
That itself.
Absolutely. But thank you, Steven Spielberg for bringing, it back to everybody.
Yeah.
And so when I heard who they were auditioning and who they had auditioned and who they had called back and who they had called back twice and who they had called back the third time, and they were now in the fourth, fifth, and
Yes, they
sixth
were.
callback for Jim Cummings, who, by the way, was the first person they read for the character.
Oh, we're
And
kidding.
after months and months of auditions,
I didn't know that.
they cast him. And
I was the first one?
the
to
very
audition?
first person to read for it.
Wow, I didn't know
And
that.
then, they had gotten to the point where they were having to pay you for callbacks because SAG.
I think I got 2 paychecks
I think
out
so
of
too,
that.
because SAG tells you can audition 3 times without
Yeah.
getting compensated.
Sure,
and
sure.
after that, you have to be compensated because there's more stress, there's more.
Takes time out of your day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's more, and it
Yeah.
gets deeper and deeper. The problem I had with that show was Roger Rabbit was live action and animated. It was very simple to see who
Yes.
the live people were and who the animated
Right.
characters were. Bonkers was supposed to be about this world where that was the same. There were live characters and there were tunes, but they were all animated.
They were
So
all
it didn't
animated.
make any sense.
it
I could
didn't-
never.
It wasn't clearly delineated.
It was not.
the
And
line.
then some nasty business took place, you may recall, where I was directing, I think I did 40 episodes of that show, and they were doing 65.
Yeah.
And then they invited somebody to come sit in and watch. And, okay, fine, no problem. Come watch. And then one day out of the blue, Andrea, we're going to have that person direct the rest of the episodes. It was crummy business. It was bad business. It really was.
Yeah, I remember.
But my point is, no matter what
I
success
remember.
you have or where you are, you always get fired.
Yeah.
You're always eligible to be fired, to
yes.
be replaced. It
Yes,
doesn't
you
matter if
are.
you're Frank Welker or Jim Cummings or John
No.
DiMaggio or Tress McNeil, you can get replaced.
Yes,
and
that's
so
Especially us. We're like, oof.
it's
Yeah.
a shame.
Show business is so crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was just
especially
talking
with-
to one of my friends about this. Sorry to interrupt.
No, please.
Just last week, and we were talking about awards, right? And in the film industry, you can literally win an Oscar and be broke. Like, how many stories have you heard?
Many.
Like Oscar
Many.
winners
Yes,
and can't
that's
find
right.
a
Coming
job.
up and saying, please hire me.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just
in their
so-
acceptance speech. Please hire me. I need a job.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Now, based off that statement, did you feel more job security behind the scenes, or no? Is it the same situation?
It's the same situation. I was very lucky that I came into the industry at a time just before it exploded, just before so many cartoons were being made and they needed voice directors. And I started as a casting director, and then Ginny McSwain moved on to direct, and I became the, I was there at Hanna-Barbera, and then Disney, Tom Ruzicka, do you remember
boy,
him?
sure.
Who I knew from being an agent, and I was an agent. He was a creative director at Leo Burnett, and we had done business together. And he called me one day and said, "We're going to create this thing called Disney TV Animation." And frankly, I was shocked. I was like, "There is no TV division for
Yeah, you would
animation right
think,
now?"
huh? Yeah.
Just like
I
there
didn't
wasn't
know-
for Warner
yeah.
Brothers. And so he said, "Yeah, we're going to do this thing called Ducktales, and we're going to audition a bunch of different directors,
Yes,
and
they
somebody
did.
will do the remaining. We're going to have 5 people audition as directors, and then one of them will do the remaining 60." And I directed the second episode, and they said, "We're not even going to audition the other directors. We want you to do them all."
look at that.
And what was shocking was
Hooray.
Hanna-Barbera let me stay on staff, casting in Hanna-Barbera, while I went off 1/2 day a
Ooh,
week and
nice.
directed DuckTales. Never would be
That's
allowed
awesome.
today.
That's
Never would be
awesome.
allowed. They were so awesome to let me do that. And
That's
then
for
I started
sure.
doing Rescue Rangers and then a bunch of
yeah.
other stuff. Winnie
Tons.
the Pooh.
Yes.
What was the name
Yes,
of the
yes.
producer that used to direct?
Carl Gears.
Carl Gears.
Was it Carl Gears?
He asked me to come in and direct.
4 or 5 of those
because he didn't
separate
want to
series.
direct anymore. He wanted to be able to sit back and just listen. I think it was Carl.
Yeah.
Who was the one? Whoever it was used to let us all
Not
sit
Ted.
down on the carpet, and he would tell us the story of the episode like we were kids getting read a nighttime story.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
That was him. And
that Carl?
Yeah, Carl did that. He had the beard and the glasses and always wore a vest. Great guy. Great guy. Really cool guy.
He was terrific, whoever he was. I can't remember his name. I'm embarrassed. It might have been Carl. But what was so lovely is, usually when you do an animated series, my experience had been all the actors sit around with the scripts. I have the script. I describe what action
You
is
write stuff.
important.
Yeah.
The actors make their notes. We rehearse. We'll set any guest voices that
Yes.
maybe had not been established yet, and then you record. But this was different. He would describe the story. We literally would sit on the floor with our blankets and pillows practically, and he would describe the story, and then we would get up and record it.
Yeah.
And it was joyful. I loved it. I thought it was so
great.
much fun.
Yeah, and we did that, a lot of them at the old B&B.
B&B,
Right, B&B
remember?
sound, yeah. That was great.
Yeah, it was.
But now
Did a
it's a
lot of them
sandwich shop. Oh, well.
Is that what it is?
Porthos sandwich shop.
Oh my goodness, that is where it is.
Yeah.
And isn't Dubbing Brothers also over there too? I think they have a little piece of it. There is still some recording
Where?
in there, in that same building, but farther
I don't know.
east on what
Could
is
be.
that? Magnolia.
Yeah, well, there's everything there.
Yeah.
It's all
Portos
still
is
there.
great. Just had some pastry for them yesterday.
That's crazy. And, speaking of Bonkers, I can still remember, and it's such a weird little thing. It just popped into my head. I think I might have mentioned it before, but during those callbacks, and we had so many callbacks, it was down to me, Matt Frewer, who was Max Headroom,
Right.
and a guy who was on a show called In Living Color at the time called Jim Carrey.
Yes.
And
Yes!
and it was the only time I ran into him in my professional life ever. I think he's so brilliant. But he went in first, maybe alphabetical order, who knows? And he had a briefcase. Then he came out and he goes, "Gentlemen, you may leave." and he picked up his briefcase and Jim carried out of the building. And I went,
Great.
I'm going to kick his ass.
And you did.
Yeah, and so I
you
did once.
And you know who else came in to audition for that show? That was his first animated series, Ron Perlman.
No way.
Ron,
no way.
Grading.
yeah.
Grading.
Well,
he played one of the humans.
Yes,
right?
that's
he was
right.
a police officer.
He was, he was a tough
Fabulous,
guy. Yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah,
And
he's an old.
just loved him.
Had him
And-
on the podcast.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And then, who else was in that show was Rita Moreno.
Yes.
And I remember, when we would get to all the callbacks and go, okay, here's the preferred. Rita Moreno or I'm like, Rita Moreno.
Yes.
Triple threat. She's got an Emmy and an Oscar and a
and
Tony.
everything.
And she wants to do our show. Are you kidding? Just
and
say
she brought her daughter
yes.
to the sessions.
I was like,
because she was getting a big kick out of it.
it was so much fun. She was game, absolutely game. And to watch actors like that learn from animation voice actors, they would watch, they would just look and go, oh. And we'd say, the temptation is to overlap like you do in normal work, but you can't
right.
overlap in
I remember.
animation. And talking about how to turn pages, and you can't turn pages on your dialogue. You have to wait. Those little tiny things. But you don't have to teach them acting.
Nope.
You don't have to teach them anything about
not
finding
her.
a character.
It was so cool
Fabulous.
because I would get there early so I could sit next to her.
Nice.
And she was just as pretty as a picture. She was gracious.
Delightful.
And she brought her daughter and she goes, and she goes, "This is fun. You can do it. You can do anything."
Right.
Because you know what I always have a problem with? I'm a little too much. I could be too much.
Never for animation.
Not here, honey.
No.
It's like you can just go. This is like a license to steal. Any more lines? And she was like,
So great.
and it
She
gives
was
me,
so game.
Yeah.
And was it Nancy
Couldn't believe
Cartwright
it.
on this too? Nancy Cartwright, I think, was
Oh, she
Fawn.
was.
The
Fawn,
little
dear, Bonkers.
Yes.
She was Bonkers' girlfriend she didn't really like him that much, but he sure liked her.
Because she was dreamy.
Because she was dreaming.
She was
yeah.
really, and she was
Fawn,
kind of
dear.
spacey. She was like, "Is that a Chris at the Bubs?"
Yeah.
I remember this because this audition
Yeah.
copy I've used a million
my
times.
God,
And
yeah.
Bonkers, why is your heart pounding out of your chest like that?
Yeah.
So sweet.
Yes.
Wonderful
Oh my God.
actors in that. Wonderful.
Yeah.
But then we did a lot
They
of.
don't make them like that anymore,
No,
folks.
it's true. But we also did a lot of Warner Brothers stuff together, and you
Oh,
came in and
tons,
played on
tons.
Tiny Toons, and you sang on some of the main titles,
Lots
I
of them.
believe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I was on the main title. It took a while for it to fade off because it was every like 8 or 9 shows somebody else would be singing well, that was Tasmania, but and then Rob says something.
Right.
The end. You know,
right. It was fun.
yeah,
Those were
it
fun.
really was.
Pinky and the Brain you came to play on.
Yeah. One of my favorites was when the Animaniacs went to Ireland and you hired me to be an Irish guy, but I wasn't allowed to say anything. But I was supposed to never shut up, but I couldn't say anything. So you told me I had to do Irish gibberish for the whole thing. And I went, "And vlees is verstoten, we gezegd, en daar gaat het door Mick." And I would always end it in Mick. You know, and
I love that you remember that.
Oh yeah, and this is great, you know. And I said, I'm gonna call my dad and everybody tell him I got to be some really Irish guy.
I went to Ireland for the first time last year. I went
Oh,
to.
yeah.
I was invited to Dublin Con.
Oh my
What a
gosh! Well, that's where
lovely-
green comes from.
It is where green comes from, and
Yeah.
the fans are fantastic.
I
there.
know.
What a country, Ireland, and then we stayed towards Scotland for a couple of weeks too, and that was magnificent.
Did you survive and enjoy any meals there? I mean, did you like to eat there?
You know, I enjoyed my
Haggis?
Jameson.
No, just kidding.
No, I haven't eaten meat in 50 years, so I don't eat organs.
Don't
or
worry,
any of
it's
that
not
stuff.
meat. It's
not-
lips and
It
gland.
is meat. It's
I'm
animal
kidding.
flesh. I know it's no.
You don't
none
want-
of
you
that.
don't- no, you got
Great
it.
cheese, wonderful
That's true.
cheese, excellent. No, I had no trouble eating. That was fine. It was fine. I just,
I understand they have some beer and whiskey over there.
I learned to drink Jameson,
Yeah.
and I
see?
also learned that Guinness in the north of Ireland,
Oh.
Murphy's in the south of Ireland.
Yeah,
they're
that's
both
right.
those foamy
Yeah.
dark beers, but apparently
yeah.
there's. So I learned that Hinden Walsh.
And they
taught me
serve
that.
them like room temperature.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
So
they
It
do.
is like a meal, though.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
It really
little
is. You can
pints,
chew on it.
and absolutely delicious, though. Loved
Yeah.
it. And
Well-
there was no fish and chips available in the country anymore because Rogerio and I ate them all.
Oh, okay.
Everywhere we went.
I was going, wait
We
a
go,
minute.
well, let's have a salad. Nah, fish and chips.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they really know how to make it. But we went even to Belfast, and that was phenomenal. And
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I stole your story about the Irish accent and
No,
went off on a
that's
tangent, as I
it's
often
a beautiful
do.
thing. Yeah. We had so much fun doing those.
So much
My
fun.
God.